Thank you for showing up today. So as I'm sure you are very much aware of, this is about a teaching philosophy statement. And we took kind of two approaches to this, kind of the crafting of it on the pedagogy end about what this looks like to actually build, and then kind of the career aspect of about how it can actually be useful in the workplace, about what it means a bit more. So I'm going to kind of talk for about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little less, depending how quickly I speak, and kind of, we're going to start off with kind of what it is, how to prepare yourself to write it, and then the actual writing process of it. So I guess for today, also as a heads up, this is being recorded, and you can, if you want to take a look at it at another time, please feel free. It'll be on our website. Okay.
No, can we go back really quick and just introduce all of us?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just the first screen. Shelby, go next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shelby Lamar. I'm the Associate Director for the Preparing Future Faculty Program.
Oh, and good morning, or no, just kidding. Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Ponce. I'm the Director of Career and Professional Development.
And hi, good afternoon. My name is Ro Lee. I'm the Associate Director for the Career Professional Development.
And
I guess I'm next.
yes.
Thanks, Cleo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cleopatra Tellis. I'm a doctoral candidate in the DBOS Psychology Department, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for inviting me to learn and speak with you all.
Yeah, of course. And I am Noah Ringler. I'm a community college professor and PFF fellow.
I'm Mark Smith. I am a doctoral candidate in political science, concentrating in American government and public law.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, I'm Dana Goland, Department of Politics and Economics, PhD student, second year, about to declare an interfield degree. So that's in the works.
Nice to meet you. Also, if you don't want to introduce yourself, don't feel pressured to. But if you would like to, go for it.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Margot Welsh. I am an alumni in the DBOS program, and I also sit on the Alumni Association board. So I am happy to go through this and see all these faces here.
Okay, nice to meet you, Margot.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meryem Gurer. Right now I'm in Istanbul. I'm a PhD student in political science. I am focused on comparative politics and international political economy with data analysis. So here, I am here for also teaching, and thank you for today.
Thank you, Miriam. I think we should probably get started now, and we can take a pause later.
Sure. Okay, so as we dive into this, and I'll talk about exactly what a teaching philosophy statement is, but a lot, you will not be coming out of this webinar with a teaching philosophy statement written already. A lot of this requires a ton of reflection. So I guess one of the first things I kind of want you to just think about, either on your own, please feel free to share in chat, or don't share, totally up to you. Pretend you just retired from teaching after a long career, and what would you want your students to say about you? Does anything come to mind? So take a few minutes, and ultimately these sorts of questions are at the essence of a teaching philosophy statement. So take a minute, think about it, and I'm interested to hear if anyone wants to share anything. Again, no pressure to share if you don't want to.
Can I share?
Yes, absolutely.
You can talk and I can share.
Yeah.
What I would expect from the students, I would expect that they complete and they achieve their fulfillment in the class, and they do something valuable. I would like them. Yes, I would like to hear from them that they achieve something valuable. this
The,
this is only I can. This is the only statement or only word that I would like to hear from them, because teaching is valuable, but being student also is very valuable.
yeah, completely agree. Yes,
I think.
completely agree. And I think, so let me just, does anyone else want to share before I kind of dive into that idea a bit more?
I think I'm going to share now. I
Sure.
don't, I'm not a full-time faculty member by any means. I've taught in the past, but I do know that this workshop today is on teaching philosophy, but it also has embedded like life's philosophy and what we do in life in order to share our gift of teaching or any other gift that we have. And so your question it makes me ponder, like, what would you want your students to say about you? And so I always think about, like, what do I want my clients to say about me when I'm done? When I'm done teaching, I'm retired, I've passed, or I'm no longer at the institution. And I always feel like, if I could get them to a space that they learned about themselves and they were able to grow so that they can continue on however they do in that career trajectory for themselves, is where I'd want them to be. Because I truly feel like every one of us in the world should wake up every day and love what we do. And so we can't live our philosophy if we're not in a positive space. And so if we can take our intellectual capital and our knowledge and disseminate it to the students, then they can do the same. And this becomes this huge domino effect. So that's what I would want everyone to say about me if I were to retire, which I'm hoping to do soon.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, so we also see in the chat, I would hope students say they felt supported as a human. So that is great. Not only as a student, especially students trying to learn in more challenging and chaotic circumstances. Okay, these are all great comments. And I guess these sorts of ideas, I just want you to kind of hold that with you as we go through this, because it's going to dictate your answers to some of the questions we talk about next, okay? So kind of on my end, from the PFF side, what I want to go over quickly is just describe exactly what a teaching philosophy is. A lot of this document is preparation, and then preparation takes some time, and then you're ready to write it. So I'm going to talk about some questions you're going to want to ponder when you're preparing to write it, then actual direct tips upon writing it, what it looks like, stuff like that. And then also how to check whether you did a good job with a rubric, okay? So kind of at the broadest level, what it is, I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a hiring committee that knows nothing about you. And they're trying to figure out, well, what do you bring to the table as a teacher? And they are reading through 30 applications or something. So you have to keep in mind, this has to be a brief document, or else they will lose interest quickly, all right? So you're thinking of a 1 to 2 page document, and upon reading it, they should get a solid sense of who you are as a teacher, and what values you're trying to promote. And what is very key is they want to know that this isn't all talk, because we can all talk about these things broadly in general terms, but also you should have specific examples of when you were that person in the classroom, or if you don't have that experience in life. So more or less, why is it important? Because it is a kind of quick way to show who you are in a 1 to 2 page document, and it really can make you unique in the application process. When you're applying for a job, like, you can only get so much from a CV. This is a really good way to humanize you and make you stick out in one way or the other. And hopefully after this, it'll be in a positive way. So let's say you've created a nice TPS. When is it useful? So we talked about the job aspect. If you're applying for teaching jobs, it is not uncommon to be asked for this document. I was when I was pursuing that. I think what isn't necessarily as obvious, it is really, really useful in course design, because it can almost act as your North Star to remind you of what you're trying to build in the classroom. When we talk about course design, a lot of it starts from the idea we want to think about what we want to cultivate first, and then design backwards. And in this way, this is a overarching value system that you're trying to build in your classroom, and how can you build that? So I think it isn't, in that way, it can be really helpful in actual course design. Also, teacher Twitter and web presence is a real thing that helps people get jobs. And again, this is just a document that can make you stick out. So adding this sort of document to that website or your online presence can be highly valuable. Okay, now this looks like a lot of text. It is, but just stay with me. So I mentioned, I do think this document, this requires a lot of reflection. It just does. Like, you can say, I want to promote inclusive design, but you have to think about what exactly does that mean? How do you define those terms? So to me, the big challenge for a TPS is reflecting enough that you feel very confident in defining who you are. And that's a tall task when I'm asking you to do that in 2 pages. So I think the first step, and this may be the longest step, is reflecting, and reflecting thoroughly. I think some questions you may want to ask yourself, and bear with me as I go through these, but what is your overarching goal as an educator? So I heard, I want to be of value to students. Well, what does that mean? What skills do you want to develop in your students? And those skills, how do you facilitate that learning? Specifically, how do you do it? How do you assess learning? Is it unique in any way? A thing that can really make you stick out is if you show an understanding of discipline-specific problems in your field, and show how you plan to kind of pursue those and solve those. And again, I just want to emphasize this point, especially, do you have specific examples for these ideas? This is wildly important. It shows that you aren't just talk. It makes you unique when you have specific examples. Also, it can be really good to talk about how your views of education have changed. When I go on to this next slide and talk about specific tips, a general tip is you want to be humble and show growth. And I think talking about how you've changed and how it shows a flexibility that is desirable, at least for most people looking to hire people. That desire to grow is meaningful. All right, so let's say you've done the reflection. Now what? You feel confident in saying who you are. Well, you have now some kind of, this next section is going to some actual very specific tips about you're ready to write it. Now what? What are some very specific tips on that? Okay. So one, remember, you are applying, often these jobs have 30, 40 candidates sometimes, all right? So you only get so much time to stick out. So it should be brief, and it should be concise and well written. It depends, if it's a tenure level, it may be 3 to 5 pages, maybe. Other places 1 to 2. You will kind of see that laid out often. 2, you will want to use a narrative first person approach. This just makes it sound more personal, and that is really valuable. Again, you're trying to stick out in some way. 3, can't emphasize this enough, you want to be specific, not abstract. If you say you stand for something, be sure that you have examples that show you do stand for that. Another thing, just as a general rule of thumb, avoid jargon and technical terms, because that can throw some readers off and you can lose some people with that. So just as a general rule, avoid them, okay? And again, so this is meant to supplement your CV. It is not meant to kind of replicate it. So a key point here is that you don't want to just talk about everything you've done. This is meant to kind of show the hiring committee what makes you unique in the classroom or in leadership. So this is a different document. So make sure you aren't just repeating what you've done, and it's a value document. So it should be distinct in that way. And last few things. So, right, you want to show that we are constantly learning in the classroom and in life. So that should be clear. Like, don't act like you know everything about teaching, because you don't. Students change, life changes, and we want to be flexible with those changes. And so be sincere, unique. The amount of times I've been on a hiring committee and the amount of times you see I have a passion for teaching, it's like 1 out of 2 documents. Really avoid the cliches, because they tend to come across as empty words, even if they're not. And lastly, this is an evolving document. So what I mean by that is, who I was as an educator 5 years ago is not who I am today. And again, that's for a variety of reasons. More experience, different students, different times, come with different challenges. So once you write this, you're not going to be done with it. It's going to be something you want to reflect on as you move along. Before I go to my kind of last few slides, are there any questions about this? Concerns, existential crises? Feel okay? Okay. If there are, please feel free to pop it in chat. All right. So I kind of talked about these very specific tips, and I think
Miriam has a question.
Oh, please. Sorry about that.
Yes, sorry for the interruption. I'd like to ask about you mentioned about the values, beliefs, and the goals. I mean, to articulate how to teach. But I mean, here, what do you present? Should I take it as a individually, but I take it as a institutional norms? Can you understand me? I don't take the teaching as a personal thing, but it's about the institution.
Well,
institutional rules, policies, and norms. So
Noah, can you repeat the question so that I couldn't hear you, Miriam.
Sure. If I'm understanding you correctly, were you saying that teaching is more influenced by the institution, not the individual?
Yes, this is what I would like to add. Otherwise, because I have some experiences, I would like to talk frankly. Some professors, they bring their own individual perspectives in the classroom. So it exceeds the institution. Also, it puts the student into some hard situations. I experienced this. So this is why I never take the teaching as a personal experience, but it is institutional experience.
It's a complicated comment because indeed we are situated within institutions, and our freedom to operate is very much influenced by the institutions we reside in.
It's because every university is some different.
I can only speak from my experience, and I do think we as individuals have a lot of, at least in my experience, I've had room to operate within the institutions I've worked at. Is it the case that you have some limits and flexibility? Yes, I've experienced that as well. But for example, like, what do you want to build in your students? How do you assess learning? I've personally had a lot of flexibility in my approach to that. And if you think of it from an institutional level, well, maybe you should think about, well, within that institution, what are you trying to build within that institution, within the confines of those walls? Because those are real walls. I would never say that.
This is why institutions policy is important.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
Maybe if I could add to that, sorry, just jumping in. It's like kind of, obviously we have these certain parameters that we have to navigate and certain objectives that we have to kind of like meet for our students. But within that, and I guess I teach writing, I teach literature, right? So it's like kind of easy to kind of like be able to kind of connect the like students like humanity in that sense, right? And I think that's like the case for a lot of things that we kind of like navigate in life, period, or else we become like robots. So it's like within those parameters, that's part of, you know, us having that passion into wanting to get our students to meet those objectives. But it's not just like having them jump through the hoops. So what you're saying is correct, right? But within that, there's a lot of freedom for us to help them get to those places where they are meeting, you know what I'm saying, certain assessments, or, you know, checking off whatever it is. But it's kind of that's where our humanistic side kind of jumps into it, if that makes any sense.
It makes a ton of sense. I think really well said. Thank you. I do want to, if we can wait for further questions, because I want to make sure I don't go over time and leave room for everyone else. Okay. But thank you for sharing. So I kind of talked about the reflective piece, the specific tips, and then when you're actually writing it, remember this is 1 to 2 documents. So what are we trying to do? Basically, you're going to have that introduction that's going to introduce the reader to your core beliefs. That body should really show how you're embodying those core beliefs. Those specific examples I talked about, that's where those should go. And I can't, again, this specific example piece is so important. And then the conclusion, you're kind of going to summarize those core beliefs. And this is where you can show that humbleness and desire to improve in the future. So how do you engage in professional development, those sorts of ideas. And I think generally this is a solid approach for creating a pretty good document. The last few things, and I will then send it over to Cleo. I just also added this rubric in case you have it written and you want to kind of take a look about whether it meets certain standards. This will be on the slides that you can access on the website. In addition, we have a bunch of other resources on the PFF Claremont Graduate University website. So if you really want to go deep into this, there's a TPS workbook that is extremely thorough, okay? And there's also a different kind of rubric, same general ideas in there as well. And we are always available for any kind of meetings or one-on-ones if you want to talk about it more explicitly. With that said, I just want to send it over to Cleo. I don't want to go over my time and make sure everyone else has enough time themselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Noah. So I want to share with all of you that I had a pleasure to work with Dr. Thellis, almost Dr. Thellis. I like to use that often because she just became a doctor and she deserves every moment of it. And so I asked her today to come back and talk about her journey and how she chose her philosophy and how it's important for her. And so I thought this would be a great option. We do, as we navigate the next part of the workshop and webinar, we really like to present informally. So please ask us questions along the way. Feel free to chime in verbally like you did, Juan, that's fine. Or if you want to put it in the chat, Allison, that's fine too. We totally get it. Whatever is your preference. Hi, Cleo.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, you want to give just a little quick, background about who you are, talk about where you are, and then we'll get into some questions and talk about your journey.
For sure. So good afternoon again. I am originally from Miami, Florida. I'm a first generation college student, graduate, all of those things. My parents are from Haiti, which is an island in the Caribbean. And before moving to California for graduate school, I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, where I first had an opportunity to teach full time. That was my first opportunity. So I taught at a high school. I was doing AmeriCorps. I liked teaching, but I didn't like teaching that age group. So it told me something about what it is I wanted to do in the longer term. And so after that experience, I moved to California, worked on my master's degree at CGU in applied social psychology, and then continued on in a doctoral program in applied social psychology. I like to say that I'm a social issues researcher. because I'm interested in basically figuring out how the world could be better by using social psychology. So my dissertation looks at masculinity and race and gender intersections and cross-gender interactions. And that shows up in how I teach, right? So my interest in making the world better, using psychology to do that, thinking intersectionally, thinking critically, shows up in how I frame my classroom and what I think education should look like.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So just raise your hand if you have a question, because I don't see anybody's pictures on there as I could before, which is totally fine. So anyways, Cleo, share a little bit about, how did you develop and choose your teaching philosophy? Why is it important? Like, what was the process behind that? And then if anyone wants to chime in and ask questions, please do.
So my teaching philosophy comes out of my passion for people and diversity and growing up in a city like Miami, Florida, which is very diverse, and making sure that everyone feels like they see themselves in what they're learning and the information that they're getting. Because my experience was not always that way, particularly in graduate school, where I would be learning things that I thought were interesting, but I felt like there were voids that weren't representing me or some of the people very close to me. And with that being said, I, again, knew that I wanted to be in education and teach. And it also informed what environment and what city I wanted to do that in and what institution I wanted to do that in. So I'm currently now in Houston, Texas, where I'm an assistant professor at Lone Star College. And I feel like this city reflects more of what I experienced growing up in the city of Miami, Florida. And the school that I am currently an assistant professor at also during the interview process made it very clear that they were interested in justice orientations, diversity and inclusion orientations in their faculty members. And I saw that show up in the way that they asked me questions during the interview. So I came to understand more and more that the interview wasn't just about them trying to make a decision about me, it was about me trying to make a decision about them as well. So I paid attention to the questions that they asked me, how they asked me the questions, and how they reacted to what I said, because some of my answers, I recognized that they wouldn't make just anyone comfortable. And so when they got excited about some of the things that I said that would challenge the status quo in education, that was something that made me excited about choosing this institution. So I want, in terms of my teaching philosophy, if I had to choose one word that describes what I try to do as an educator, is to be transformative. I want my students to come into the classroom as their full selves and then come out as better versions of themselves because of how they experienced the material, how they experience their interactions with me and their peers, their opportunity to give me continuous feedback and understand that I'm excited to learn from them just as much as I hope they're excited to learn from me. That's something that I always try to communicate on the first day, that I'm here to facilitate your learning. I don't want you to feel like there's a power dynamic in place that you can't challenge or you don't have space to give opinions about. And so I try to frame the classroom in that way, as a leveled space where we're all learning together. And that is for a lot of reasons, but particularly because I want them to take ownership of their learning experience, and also to give me space to be flexible around what they need whenever that happens over the semester. So some of the things that I do that are kind of staples in all of my classes is I use a document called the Critical Thinking Sheet, the Ultimate Critical Thinking Sheet. And it's available online for free through Global Citizen, and it has 48 key concepts that ask things like, how do we see this in the long term? Who is this harmful to? Why has it been this way for so long? So I ask them to incorporate those key questions in every assignment that they do, and hopefully that becomes more organic for them over time. So again, that transformation piece is
Yeah.
really what frames my teaching philosophy.
So Cleo, we have a question. I think Dana raised her hand. Dana, do you have a question?
I do have a
Wonderful.
question
Hi, Dana.
for Dr. Cleo. Hi, thank you all for having this. Dr. Cleo, congratulations.
Thank you.
Super exciting. My question for you, well, and I first want to just share that my wife is a PsyD. She did her master's and two masters and and her doctorate in psychology. And so she's now practicing as a private practice. And we have 4 boys between us. So if you want to use us as any kind of test cases around masculinity, like teenage boys raised by cisgendered lesbians, let me know. In terms of social psychology, so my question is, when did you get, so you wanted to switch your population, you were from high school to teaching, apparently then college or graduate, college, undergrad, and then graduate. When did that switch happen for you during your graduate studies, right? Like, did you begin your first teaching job at the college level during your master's or work, or during your doctoral work?
Great. Thank you for that question, Dana, and for offering you and your family as potential research participants. I think that's a really wonderful question, because I thought that I was going to do a tenure track position at a research one institution, so heavily driven by research and grant writing and winning grants and things like that. And then when I had finished up the master's degree and had one more year of coursework in the doctoral program, that's when I decided to teach, because I didn't want to be in classes and teaching at the same time. So that was a personal decision for me. And once I started adjuncting at Chaffey College, I just saw how much more I liked it, because in my experience, it allowed me to have certain types of conversations with a population that was older than high school, in ways that I wanted to have it, to go more deeply into the information, but also classroom management was not my thing. And K through 12, you just have to learn that over time, get good at it. And so when I was recognizing that, it felt like, at least for me, 80% of the time, it was me trying to manage my class, and then the lesson came. I think that's important, but I also understand that that's not something that excites me, right? Having to do that. What excites me is getting into this information, unpacking it, criticizing it. And so that's really part of what helped me to make that decision about sticking with teaching at the college level, and then changing my idea about going into a research 1 or a research 2 institution, where a lot of your tenure is around like how much productivity you have around publishing and bringing in grants. Is when I was teaching at Chaffey College, I realized, and I didn't know this before, that you can get tenured at a community college where it's teaching focused. And it doesn't mean that I have to stop doing research, but it doesn't mean, what it means is that at teaching focused.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I got muted.
But you were saying teaching focused institutions?
Yes. So in teaching focused institutions, your tenure or being locked into a contract, a multi-year contract, is based on basically courses taught, pedagogy, diversity of courses taught, and institutional service. And if you want to do research, you can, but the downside is, because that's not really a part of what's expected of you, you might not get funded to do that through the institution, but you can find other ways to do that. And you might be able to request that in another way, depending on how your institution works. But again, as I was doing research and was experiencing academia with my identities, trying to navigate research politics in a way that made me uncomfortable and unhappy, and then using that to then determine whether I progressed through my career with tenure didn't seem attractive to me. But what did seem attractive to me was being able to teach a bunch of classes, work with students in that way. And then institutional service looks like advising, starting student groups, working with different types of populations. And that was something that I was already doing at CGU. So I spent a lot of time in doctoral fellowship at the Office of Black Student Affairs for the Claremont colleges. And so programming and putting on programs and student groups, that's already something that I like. So it just seemed to align with me a lot more than the other type of academic track where research and like the publish or perish idea did.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So
Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Cleo.
sorry,
Thank you. That's
Dana.
all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I want to keep moving on because I have one more question for her, and then we're going to get into some slides again. But Cleo's going to come back and forth. So can you provide a link to the ultimate critical thinking sheet? Absolutely, we can. That will cost $9.99. Just kidding. Cleo, one more question before we delve into some slides, and I might bring you right back. But you talked a little bit about it, and you may not be able to answer this, but really in reality, how do you expect your teaching philosophy to evolve over time as you emerge into this industry? And so give us like a 1-minute overview. We're going to hop on some slides after that, and then we'll come back to a couple more questions.
Okay. So being at this institution, another thing that really stuck out to me is how proactive they were about evolving their faculty as leaders would eventually have administrative positions like being chairs or deans in the department. And as I've been learning more and more, so I started this position last month, as I've been learning more and more and recognizing things like you can be on a curriculum development committee, and you can be a part of textbooks, like what textbooks we use or that we encourage people to have in their classrooms. That is something that I want to, I guess, kind of shape out and evolve in, is learning how to design curriculum and using what I'm using in terms of that critical thinking sheet and social justice and social issues to develop curriculums in different departments. So that is something that I will eventually include in how I think about teaching and educating and my overall philosophy around that. So
nice.
Yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so don't go anywhere. We're going to move on really quickly, but we're going to come back. Rose taking us back to slide 5 really quick, because Noah had some great points in here. And I wanted to, it's the one that says, teaching philosophy statement. Yeah, I wanted to kind of hone in a little bit on this as I look at the career side for all of you and kind of navigate this. The second bullet point, articulate who you are as a teacher, scholar, leader. This is really a struggle that most people have. I don't mean students, I don't mean alumni, I just people in general. It's really that opportunity to articulate who you want to share. And so what your values are, what your beliefs and goals are. So this is something that I would hope that you would spend some time thinking about, writing down, journaling, working with a career coach, working with PFF, however it works for you, someone who's in your personal board of directors, whatever that case may be, because this part is really important to understand how to articulate. So if you think of it as your networking and branding part, it's really the approach to facilitating it, but articulating it. So thank you, Ro, on that one. If we jump to slide 6, what's useful? Oh, I think it's, yeah, that one. So bolstering a website or online presence. This one was huge for me when Noah had brought this up. Our worlds used to be separate, personal and professional. They are no longer separate anymore. Nothing is private. Even if you choose to make it private, it's not private. So please be cognizant of your personal world and your professional world, because I don't want you all to go through a space where you get your PhD, you post one thing, and then you've lost everything. And so you really want to make sure that you stay clean in that presence. So just wanted to hone in on a couple of those things, and then we'll jump to the slide. I think it's slide 14. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let me take a quick pause. We have 17 people on the online right now, and thank you for those. Thank you, Cleo. Anybody have any questions before we move forward? Questions are very important, so just, and if you don't, that's okay. Okay, great. Just ask them along the way. Raise your hand or whatever the case is. Jump on in. So what is the purpose of a teaching philosophy? You're welcome, Mark. It's interesting. There's a philosophy I live by in life, and it's on my LinkedIn, although my LinkedIn's not updated. I'd rather work on yours than my own. But I always say it's not what you do in life, but it's who you are to others. That's my philosophy. That's my personal life philosophy. It's my teaching philosophy. It's my coaching philosophy. It's everything, right? And so, but this is something you have to really break down and think about, because it really is important. But the purpose of a teaching philosophy is the professional side integrating with the personal side and the pedagogical side, right? So you have all of these different components, this tripod coming together. And so you really do want to understand what that philosophy is and how that is integrated into your life. The next bullet point is clearly and coherently articulate those accomplishments and experiences. We can help you with that in our office. Shelby can help you with that in PFF. It's amazing how we come together as a team to make sure that you are comfortable articulating your accomplishments. I can share with you, the United States isn't really nice about people bragging about themselves. And so sometimes it's hard for us to learn how to articulate our accomplishments, but you should be proud of it, especially in the state of California with all 40 million of us. So really important. Reflect upon your growth and your dedication to your goals and values. So important. Like, this is your career journey, and you need to figure out how this journey is going to be for you. You need to control your own destiny and not let anyone else do that, right? So it's really about your own growth and your own succession, and how those goals and values come together to not only make the philosophy, but to also navigate the career. So that's that one. Ro, you want to take the next one, and we'll pause for a second to see if anyone had any questions in that space. Oh, wait, there's a couple things in the chat. It might be just thank yous. Yes. I was really excited thinking that there was something in the chat. Yes. And so we're very helpful. Absolutely. I paid Cleo to say that. Thank you. So we're very helpful in helping. So definitely. Any questions, and anyone want to share anything? Did y'all leave? I hope you're here. Okay, it looks like there's still 17 people on the screen, so that's good. Okay, oh good, you're okay, thanks Jocelyn. No questions, awesome. Okay, we must just be so awesome that no one has questions yet. Okay, Ro, you're up.
All right, and feel free to put questions into the chat room later. So let's go to the next slide, your professional growth. I'm sorry if I'm competing with my son that's yelling across.
Well, Jocelyn just said the same thing. She's wrangling a child. I'm like, is she wrangling your child?
All right. So the next one, how will you continue to grow as a teacher? So to show your professional growth in your teaching and philosophy statement is actually pretty crucial, because you want to show some of the stages, but you want to show that development, that additional responsibility, or how your teaching philosophy has actually evolved, right? That's something you should consider. What goals do you have for yourself, and how you reach them? This is something that I believe a lot of people have struggle with, because you're not actually sure what your goals are. I want to become faculty, and that's your goal, but then how will you reach them? You have to look a little bit beyond that. And I'm sure, Dr. Thielus could attest to this, how she probably had to think a couple steps ahead in order to maybe even choose the position that she's at now. So that's something as well. And I'm just going to go over these a little bit. And if you have any questions, please put them in your chat. Next one, have your attitudes toward teaching and learning changed over time? And I'm sure they have. So excuse me. All right. So your attitudes in teaching, I'm sure as you gain more experience, more knowledge, we get better at our jobs and we gain more skills. And also the way we teach changes over time as well. So these attitudes, I believe you have to also see what the mission statement of the place you're applying to make sure that your mission statement and your personal goals are actually in line with where you want to go. Because every school has a little different priority or maybe focus on certain types of teaching attitudes. And hopefully your attitudes reflect that as well. Or you want to look for a school that actually reflects your attitudes. Next one, how will you student evaluate?
There's a question in the chat. Can I read it?
Sure. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So Dana said, any advice on incorporating and articulating transdisciplinary research or academic focus and approach into your teaching philosophy? Absolutely. So I think that's more of an individual personal question, although it may be relative to everybody on the screen. This is where we collaborate with like TDNY and PFF and the other APD offices and even CWR, the Center for Writing and Rhetoric, to kind of like have joint sessions to really hone in, Dana, on who you are as a person and how do we embed that into articulating that. So I can discuss it on the career side and they can bring in the transdisciplinary side and then we can kind of formulate that. So just make an appointment with us and we can kind of break it down for you.
I would like to add something that's possible. So something that I did in my teaching philosophy statement was talk very briefly about the research that I do. So looking at intersection of race and gender, and then also speaking about how when I ask my students to do certain assignments like presentations, for example, I provide them with a link to psychology articles that are by BIPOC authors because they're usually undercited. And so again, what I'm doing in my research and why I'm passionate about that is showing up in the classroom and then giving an example of what that looks like and what you could potentially bring to the institution that you're applying to.
No, thank you for sharing that, especially Dr. Davis, with any of these questions. If you have something that is on point, feel free to share. And we're gonna head along. I noticed that the last 3 bullets are kind of intertwined because if you have student evals, good student evals, right? The poor student evals, we can learn from them, but we're not going to put them in our TPS unless it was a really big growth opportunity where maybe a student said something, constructive criticism, and you're able to incorporate that and improve. Unless you can show that, I wouldn't really harp too much on the negative ones, of course, but the positive ones, of course, you're going to put them in to reflect how, now, of course, you don't want to put regular statements like, oh, great teacher. But if there's any things that are a little bit more detailed, you can show, like the next point says, your skills that you employed, right? Whether it's an interactive or it calls for maybe you had to be creative. We're living in a COVID world right now. So maybe you had to also incorporate online platforms as well. And how do you make a breakout room on Zoom really interactive in a class that's supposed to have, conversations and discussions? That's something I think you should put on there as well. And how do you know you've taught effectively? Well, the student evals is one part. Another part is also your own personal growth and your own curriculums that you've created. If you look at a syllabus you created maybe in the beginning of your career and a syllabus on the same course now, you should see some growth. It shouldn't be the same materials, right? How you've employed certain learning techniques, rubrics, all these things go into your TPS as well. So if you can incorporate these in a way where it shows where you've shown growth as a professor or a teacher instructor, then this is the part, I think this slide, what that reflects. Any questions on this slide?
I think Dana had a question. Yeah, Dana, we probably should have you facilitate the future ones as well, this future workshop, because your questions are awesome too. All of you are. Sorry if my cat jumps up. I think that the critical component to your question is investigating and reflecting upon how transdisciplinary thinking influenced your approach to education. So for example, do you think any specific examples and so on? Yes, absolutely. Like you nailed it. I think we have to make this a 6-hour workshop, but we have 6 minutes left.
I think that was your team responding to me, which is even better.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, that's PFF responding. Oh, it
Thank
says
you.
that, Dana. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Shelby. Yeah. And Noah, I'm just kidding. My cat's bothering me. The kids are bothering people. Happy Friday.
And then we're gonna go on just for the
Yeah.
sake of time, but thank you for sharing that, PFF.
Yes.
They're amazing, by the way. You guys should, totally utilize them. DEI, I believe that Dr. Thiles actually she touched upon this a little bit, right? About when she talked about citing underrepresented authors, and it's like diversity, equity, inclusion is a topic, you have to write a statement usually about this as well, but you can incorporate this into your TPS, right? So you can see some of this. I don't have to read everything here. You can see these, but if you can incorporate DEI in a way that it positively reflects your contributions in that DEI field, I think you should definitely put them in, because in a philosophical way, DEI is something that should be part of your teaching as well, but also in a strategic way, because so many people are employing the fact that they want DEI initiatives, even if they don't really know what the heart of that means. Every organization, and definitely every university, wants that as part of their curriculum, as part of their school mission statement now. So if you can describe how you use that, I'm looking at the purple slide, the third slide. If you can describe how you contributed to advancing DEI in your teaching, that's the part that I would really want to harp on, because yes, you can say our school had a DEI initiative and I met that. I would actually want to see the other way, where you take that initiative and say how you contributed to the DEI initiative. Okay. Any comments? Okay, we're going to move on.
You want me to go? I can talk.
Oh, yeah,
next.
go ahead.
Oh, go back one row.
There we go.
We do want you to know, because we left it with the DEI part. Next Friday at this time, we're doing the DEI workshop with PFF as well. And really, so the diversity, equity, or diversity statements basically have been around for quite some time, but really started to field the employers on the higher education academic side first, and then now it's delved into everything. My husband works for FEMA. He wrote one. The government's writing them, or in the sense of the application process. So regardless of the industry that you're considering, at some point you will write one. We want you to feel comfortable with how you view diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding how to write a statement and make it authentic for you. So there's a QR code on here. It's also on both of our sites, PFF and on Career and Professional Development. You can email us. I dropped some emails in the chat, so there's no way that you can't sign up if you want to. If you're unable to join, I'm sorry, Jocelyn, you just won't be able to do it. Just kidding. No, we'll record it, of course, and we'll have it on all of our sites. But it's really important for you to join. We want you to be there, but absolutely we'll have available after. And then the next slide, we just wanted to share with you our diverse team in the Career Center, because they're so awesome and our students are amazing. Every single staff member in here is a student except Ro and I. And so really am so proud and honored to work with all of them in their own journey. And then the last slide, I think we have one more, talks about all of the events that are coming up. Some of them, they're very collaborative. Like I said, the diversity statement workshop's coming up next Friday. You can see all the different ones that we're doing in our office. And we really do try and collaborate all the time, because that's so important for us. The conversations about the future, it looks like it wasn't put in there, but that's in collaboration with our Center for Writing and Rhetoric. The Industry Summit is our collaboration with the Office of Alumni Engagement. So always collaborating. And then the last slide, which is so important, is to connect with us. Both teams together work very seamlessly together and want to support you during your academic journey, but also as your alumni journey. So, and then we still have 3 minutes left, and just wanted to take a moment to thank Cleo for joining us today from Texas. such a pleasure to see you and so proud of you in your journey, and so excited that all of you are online with us. And it was a pleasure to present with Noah and Shelby as well. So any questions or anything else? I'll stop.